Educators Lead, Episode 6.
There's no job like it. It's really hard, it's really challenging, it can be time consuming, but at the end of the day, we're having an impact on the lives of who's going to be our leaders in the futures.
Welcome to Educators Lead, where we interview leaders in education to offer inspiration and practical advice to help launch educators into the next level of leadership. I'm your host, Jay Willis, and I want to thank you for subscribing to our show.
This is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Educators Lead. Let's join my friend Jay Willis and get ready to take your leadership to the next level.
Hello, Edu Leaders. Jay Willis here, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Jerry Pritzl. Jerry, are you ready to launch?
I'm ready.
All right. Jerry is originally from Park Falls, Wisconsin. This is his second year as a middle school principal in Poynette, Wisconsin. Prior to becoming principal, he was the Poynette High School assistant principal and athletic director for 3 years. Before that, he taught 8th grade math at Poynette Middle School for 7 years and coached several different sports. Jerry's focus on standards-based grading has helped their district become one of the best districts in the state, and his administrative team will be presenting at a number of state conferences about this topic over the next year. Jerry is currently writing his dissertation to complete his doctorate degree from Edgewood College. That's just a brief introduction, Jerry, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path.
I went to school at college at UW-Stevens Point, and my original interest was to get into business. And as I went through my first year of college and really thought about the people in my life that I admired and liked their lifestyles, I kept coming back to teachers whom I respected, and that really had an impact on me. So I decided to change my major and go into teaching, and I followed through with an elementary education degree, and then through the application process I wanted to teach in a middle school, and applied for a math job in Poynette and was able to get hired, and I've been here since, and so it's been falling in love with the place. I'm from northern Wisconsin, but I've kind of found a home down here in the south central part of the state.
Yeah. So tell us a little about your personal life, whatever you're willing to share. Any hobbies or what keeps you busy? But aside, obviously, being administrative keeps you pretty busy. But what else besides that?
I'm married to a beautiful wife, and we have 2 kids. My son is 5 and my daughter's 2. So at this stage of life, my free time consists of working with them and playing with them and spending quality family time. Other than that, I'm really into sports. I enjoy watching basketball and football and baseball. When it's nice out, I like to get out on the golf course and exercise and go, have trips spent going back up to northern Wisconsin to visit family and getting out on the lakes and enjoying the wilderness up there.
Yeah. So you have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. We have a 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I understand that is your hobby, right?
Yeah, that's what we do pretty much.
Yeah, pour into them. That's great. So at what point along your journey did you decide to move into school leadership? Was there like a specific kind of event or moment that you made that decision?
Jay, I do remember it pretty clearly. And I was early in my teaching career, I decided to pursue a master's degree, partly because it was you can get a raise and move up the pay scale. And through that process, I started to learn really how much of an impact, teachers can have on student learning and the lives of students, and that what we do really matters in the classroom. And then one of my professors in one of those classes made the comment that, the teacher is the most important most important factor in whether a student's going to learn or not. However, the building principal has an even greater impact on student learning and the student's experience. And the superintendent has an even greater impact because of all the decisions that they made, and that really stuck with me. So I finished my master's degree, a 2-year program in professional development, and then a year later I enrolled in a principal licensure program because I was struck by that, and I love teaching, I love being in the classroom, but I often thought that I wanted to, I wanted to take that next step and see if I could have an impact, like they said, and make and as I'm finding out, it's very true.
So tell us a little bit about the journey to becoming a school administrator. I mean, just kind of the process. Is that something where you had to, I mean, obviously you had to take more classes. So, did you have kids at the time? How did you find time to pursue that goal along with everything else you were juggling?
You're never really ready for to have kids, or you're never really ready for grad school, but at the same, in my opinion, but I think you sign, if that's your goal, you sign up and you make it happen. My master's degree program was pretty intense. It was a cohort model, and we had classes on Saturdays and Sundays from 8 to 4:30 both days. So those one weekend a month. So those weekends were pretty tough.
Wow, yeah.
Then when I got in the principal licensure program, I found a cohort model, which was really nice because I was able to connect with a group of people who were in the same time period in their life, had the same interests, for a 2-year time span as we went to class together. And it was a weekend thing. And then when it comes time to do your homework, you just do it, and I'm kind of a procrastinator, so I need due dates. So when the due dates were there, I was, working hard to meet those. And it makes things a little hectic, but it sure feels good when you accomplish that and finish it as well.
Yeah. So take us, what was the most difficult part of the journey? Like if there was, one specific point in time, along the path from the moment you decided that you wanted to become a school administrator to where you actually achieved that, just take us to one of the most difficult moments and tell us about that story.
Let's see here. So, I think applying for jobs is in trying to find the right fit, and trying to make a career decision of, do I want to move my family, and really balance that process. And then once you get your mind made up and you find an opportunity that would be the perfect fit, then, going through the process of getting an interview and then doing well in the interview and getting the offer of the job are difficult. I went through many interviews and application processes where I wasn't chosen. So, that's kind of the tricky part. And I think that mental struggle is one I continue to deal with, as far as what do I want my career to look like, what's best for my family, all of those different factors that it's pretty comfortable being a teacher and being comfortable with the people you work with and being comfortable in the school that you work with too. So making a change and the stress that's involved with that change is pretty difficult. And I would have to say, for me, that's one of the things that is challenging in a different part of the process.
Yeah. Was there any one of those particular rejections, like when you were applying for jobs, any one of them that stood out above the rest as far as being more difficult?
Not really. I kind of look at it as if, every interview I go into, this is what I'm about, and we have to be a fit. You have to view me as the candidate you want, and if I don't end up getting selected, then I feel good about that then, because it wouldn't have worked out anyway, and it's got to be a mutual. I want them to think I want this guy and this is the right guy, and if there's not that feeling, then I'm okay with that.
Right. So just talking about some of the challenges along the journey, what did you do to overcome those?
Oh, I think you just keep I think, in my opinion, you keep a level head, and I believe that things fall into place, how they should, and if there's something that feels right in your gut that you want to follow and pursue, you follow and pursue it, and if it works out, it works out, and then you just continue to give it your best every day and work towards doing your best and getting through that process. So I think it's just a steady, upbeat mind, and it really helps to have a job that you like. So if you don't get a job, then it's okay. I really like what I'm doing now, and that could have been a different opportunity. But I think it's your mindset and how you look at things.
Yeah. What kind of lessons did you learn along the way, like as you were pursuing this goal and through the challenges that you went through? What kind of things did you learn?
I learned that prior to becoming an administrator, I really had no idea, about what it took and how to answer the interview questions. And that I was fortunate enough in my early years as an administrator to have a really, really good mentor. So I learned so much through that process and being able to bounce things off of that person. And it's truly, one of the lessons I've learned throughout my whole educational career is, it's a team effort. And it's even as the building leader, we all need to make collective decisions. And if I don't know the answer right now, that's okay. I just need to say that, and then work hard to find out the answer and find out the direction that we should go in, and try and make that as a collective and everybody pulling in the same direction as possible. I think that's one key lesson. Another is, just being able to, and just as a teacher, you have to build relationships. You have to establish, in order for people to listen to you, in order for kids to listen to you, in order for anybody to buy into what you're saying, I think they have to like you, and they have to understand where you're coming from. And even if you have to make a difficult decision, you approach that decision with tact. You have empathy for the impact that it's going to have on somebody's life, and then you talk to them in that manner and be as transparent as possible about why things are the way they are, and people respect them.
Yeah. So you've been then in school administration for how long total, like between assistant principal and principal?
This is my 5th year.
5th year, okay. So if you were to just think of one event, one time when, like, what has been your best moment as a school administrator? If you could just share just a story, one specific moment that was really meaningful.
There's a lot of them, Jay, but I think one the first thing that came to my mind was just 2 weeks ago. I was leaving my office, and I saw a kid walking down through the campus, and he was a student that I taught, and then I was working with him as he was in high school. And he was one of the difficult student to work with, and he had an IEP and things like that, and spent a lot of hours working with that young man. And when he was coming back, he was actually coming back into the school to meet with his special ed teacher, because his graduating class graduated 2 years ago. But he was getting back after it, and he was coming back after school to finish up what he needed to do to get a diploma. And there were some times where he wasn't always happy and things like that. But we ultimately had a good relationship throughout. But then when I see him, he was genuinely excited to see me. A handshake, and he was excited about what he was doing and getting back to get his high school degree and the job that he had and the goals that he had in mind to pursue after this job. So it's moments like that. As educators, we don't often get to see the impact we have, but sometimes we're fortunate enough for students to come back and say thank you, and to see them progress, and to see some of the messages you try to get across actually coming through and hitting home with them.
Yeah. So is that kind of one of the examples when you talked about how it's the effort that you put in and you found that it's really worth it? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Stories like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I think that those kind of moments where you have an impact on an individual kid, and you're able to talk to them about that, and just kind of see the smile on their face after they're having some success in their life. And I think the other piece where I find my job really rewarding is really working hard and really using research-based practices and working with our staff to implement things that are proven to work with students, and then keeping track of our student data, and watching that grow, and watching our students achieve, and really spreading. And I get the chance as a principal to spread a culture of excellence and a culture of success, and try to build that in every interaction I have with kids, every interaction I have with our staff. That's the place that we need to be, and that's the place where we're going to be, and if we continue. And our staff really has taken on a sense of pride in the work that they're doing, in that they're becoming leaders in a lot of the areas of educational best practice.
Right. So kind of in contrasting the two, like, what would you say, what's the difference in impact that you have in the classroom when you were a teacher versus the level of impact that you have now as an administrator?
That's a great question. As a teacher, I interacted with the students that I had in class for the year, 86 kids a year or 90 kids a year. And I feel I was able to impact them, I taught them math, and I tried to establish a good relationship in a positive class environment. And, but I had them for an hour a day, and then I could see them in the hallways and I'd interact with them for lunch. But now as an administrator, I feel like the areas that are successful or the things that teachers and people working in schools do to make students successful is something that we focus on and we work on and we discuss, and I'm able to give feedback on it, and I can spread those best practices, and I see them happening in our classrooms every day. And we've been able to establish a culture where we're continually trying to get better at our practices, and it's not like that any teacher is doing it wrong. It's just that they're doing their best they can, but we can always look to improve on those practices and try and see how we can get more kids connected. And I think a lot of times, and I was the same way as a teacher, if somebody has some feedback or something for me to work on, I take that took that as personal, that it's kind of an attack on me, whereas if you really foster and develop a culture where, hey, we're at every given point in somebody's career, you're doing the best that you think you can do, and that how to do. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that 99% of the people that get in this profession want to do their best and they want their kids to learn. It's just sometimes they might not know how to do the best practices, or we all might not know how. So we just continue to learn and add tools to our tool chest, and then bring them to the classrooms. And ultimately, the kids are the ones who benefit. And and if you keep track of the data and you monitor it, and you use that data to make decisions about what kind of programming kids get, what kind of interventions they get, then they're going to grow, and we're going to move them forward, and they're going to be better prepared for life after school.
So really, it sounds like the biggest difference that you've noticed is the scope of the impact, right? So instead of just a classroom where you may only have a group of kids for maybe an hour a day or maybe an hour a week or who knows how much, versus kind of an impact on a larger scale where you have a chance to actually make a difference in the entire school. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think, in our school is small enough where I'm able to talk to and sit down with every one of our staff members for at least once every 2 weeks, and we can have one-on-one conversations where we're, continually talking and challenging each other to do better. But along with that, I also, as the principal, I make it a point that I'm on the playground every morning before school, and I get a chance to talk to every kid and get to know every 6th through 8th grader that we have. And I'm at every lunch duty opportunity too, where those are the times where I can connect, and I'm in the hall, make it a point to be in the hallways during passing time. Because when I have to work with a student on maybe a behavior issue, or they're not complying or things like that, as a principal, I have no chance of getting them to truly reflect on what they've done, or I have no chance of really having a true reflection or a true learning experience if the student doesn't like me, respect me, or have a relationship with me. But once I have that, it's kind of like you're given the keys to the Cadillac.
Right.
You can move them. You can have conversations, and it makes an impact on their thinking. And it might not sit in really well, but the wheels are turning, and they actively listen. Where even as a young teacher, I didn't realize the impact of relationships, and some kids I tried to yell at or lecture and talk to, and you can just tell that it's in one ear and out the other.
Right.
That's kind of the key to the whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's a quote. I'm sure you've heard it that I've heard several times throughout my career. Just people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'm sure that applies to, that applies to anything, but especially I'm sure in teaching. Like once a student feels as though, or a teacher in your case feels as though you actually care about them as a person, I'm sure that information or whatever it is you're trying to share with them, they actually internalize that more than if they feel like you're just kind of lecturing them, but you don't have that relationship. Absolutely.
And I think if you keep goals in mind of what we're trying to accomplish and why we're doing what we're doing or why we're working on this, then it's a collective effort to move us forward,
Yeah.
But that's absolutely true. You got to feel you're cared for,
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to go through some rapid fire questions real quick if you're ready for those.
Yep.
All right, so what is the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
Best leadership advice that I've ever received. I think listen and pay attention to every, the body language and everything that people say to you or that you hear within your staff, and be cognizant of it. And if you feel things need to be addressed, then address them in a manner that's, so just more specifically, leadership advice. If there's an issue, don't send a mass email that's directed at 5 of 30 people. Talk to those 5 people individually if they need be.
Yeah.
But do it in a manner that is cordial and but at the same point you have to get your point across of what needs to be said if there's something that does need to be said. But don't handle those things via email.
Yeah.
And along with that, never send an email that should better be in a conversation. If I get an email from a parent that has a question about something, I'm always calling them back. It's just I think I am not the best typer, and sometimes I don't trust my proofreading skills, and things can get so misinterpreted that I always feel confident in how I can express what I'm trying to get out through a phone conversation.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just email, an email can just be conceived in so many different ways, and
Right.
it's hard to judge what tone. And usually if an email can be, misinterpreted, it will be. I mean, if there's any room for misinterpretation whatsoever, people on the other end of it that are getting it are probably going to assume the worst,
Absolutely, and it can be forwarded on, and it can be used against you. You said this right here. You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of, to me, any kind of controversial or any question of anything, it's a phone call, and it's definitely well worth the time.
Yeah, that's great. So what would you say is your biggest strength as a school administrator?
My biggest strength, that's a good question. I think I'm a pretty good communicator. I think I'm cognizant of all the different methods that my staff like to be communicated with. I think all of them want to know, what's going on, and it's really important to be transparent about what we're working on, as far as curriculum-wise, what we're working on as far as, behavior interventions and supports through the building, and if there's a decision that impacts certain people, to make sure I find the time to connect with them and talk it through. So I think being a communicator is probably one of the things that I do well, and if I don't, I'm really cognizant of that, and I know the importance of it.
So what 1 or 2 books would you recommend to other school leaders?
The one that I remember, even from when I was a teacher, is what it's what great teachers do differently and what great principals do differently. It's a short book, it's a quick read, and it really has an impact. It's really simple and straightforward. One book that we work on and we hold in our district has been the centerpiece of our initiative efforts for the last 4 or 5 years, is How to Fix Broken Grades by Ken O'Connor, or 15 Fixes for Broken Grades. And for us, that's kind of it's kind of been the centerpiece so that we can focus all of our efforts on student achievement, and we don't have to have discussions or arguments about things like extra credit and averaging and things like that. But at the same time, one of them I just read that the spring of last year, which some of my teachers did a book study on, was data-driven instruction. I don't have it in front of me right now, but really that gets at the heart of how my students deal, what they struggle on, and it's in very simplistic terms, how are we going to address those needs? Whether in next year's instruction and in this week's lesson plans.
Right. Great. Do you have an app or some kind of software tool or something you'd recommend to other school leaders?
We have Google for everything, for our Google Mail or Google Drive or Google Classroom, So as far as what I use at school on a day-to-day basis, it's as for communication tool. You know, the blogger that Google has, I use that. You know, so that's one of them. I use Twitter for connection with other principals, professional development. A lot of time there's some chats going on at different times around different topics. So I use that. But overall, I think, you know, Google is overtaken our school, and it's a really efficient way for communication purposes.
Okay. What is your favorite educational quote?
Favorite educational quote? That's a good question. I think the one that you said earlier about you got to be able to touch. Let's see. You can.
The people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That one.
Yeah, and it's one of my former coaches who I have a great deal of respect for. He used to say it all the time. It's you can't teach a kid unless you touch their hearts, or something along those lines, where it really gets at you have to show the kids that you care about them before you can teach them anything.
That's good. What advice would you have for working with the student population that you serve as an administrator?
My advice for an administrator would be to be visible and get to know the kids any chance that you can get. Show an interest in what they're interested in all the time. When you have to discuss a behavior, when you have to discuss an issue, you know, I always talk about a couple things prior to that, you know, and get the kids relaxed and at ease a little bit, and then have a conversation about, you know, the issue, and then work towards a solution. So I guess my biggest advice would be visible, be present, and connect and ask kids questions. Talk to them all the time. You know, they love it, and it's a lot easier to work with them when you have that in place.
Yeah. Kind of along those lines, what piece of advice would you have for working with the educators that you lead, like the other teachers?
You know, I think it's the same thing. I think as a leader of teachers, I think if the teachers know, you know, what your goals are, what you're passionate about, you know, why we're doing the things that we're doing, why, you know, why we're spending staff meeting time discussing this topic or working on this, and then you don't waste their time. You know, time is so valuable that everybody's been stuck in meetings that you kind of like watching the clock and you're wondering why you're there. You know, don't have meetings like that. Have only meetings that are productive and everybody knows the agenda. Everybody knows what the goals are, and then when we accomplish the goal, we're done. You know, and just being real with people, understanding the challenges, and telling them that all the time. That, hey, teaching is one of the hardest jobs that there is. To do it well, you know, to teach well is one of the hardest things that there is. One of the hardest jobs that there is, and you know, the work that they do on a daily basis is to be commended and respected. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to take their time, you know, make it meaningful, worthwhile, and that they know why we're doing what we're doing, and they see value in the efforts that we're doing to improve in our practice.
Yeah. That's great. So what's the best way to connect with you if people that are listening want to connect after the show?
Oh, they can. You can email me. My email address is jeromepritzel@gmail.com, all small and no space. I'm on Twitter. My handle is @JerryPritzl. So those are two pretty good ways to connect with me.
Okay. Awesome. What's a final piece of advice for a school administrator or someone who wants to become a school administrator one day?
You know, I would say for a school administrator, it would be, you know, connect with kids, get to know them, and you know, I think if you do that, you know, I really haven't thought of coming to school or as a job for one day in my career. It's been a really rewarding experience. It's been something that there's no job like it. You know, it's really hard. It really challenging. It can be time consuming, but at the end of the day, you know, we're having an impact on the lives of who's going to be our leaders in the future. So, so as far as advice goes, you know, when you're looking for a school, you know, I would get in a school that has strong leadership, and be open to grow and ask questions, and continue to build, and never ever have the mentality that you know it all, and be willing to, you know, let them know that I might not know it all, but I'll find out what it is, and nobody's going to work harder than me.
It seems like a consistent theme in the people that I've interviewed so far for this podcast is just the most innovative leaders, the ones that would probably be considered the best leaders, are the ones who just continue to learn, and they're constantly trying to become better at what they do. And part of what comes with that is being willing to admit that you don't know everything.
Yeah, it's impossible to know everything. So really think about it. It's impossible for everybody to expect that you know everything, and then if you pretend that you know something when you really don't, your credibility takes a hit.
Yeah.
And then that has impacts on everything else that you say and do. Whereas you can respect somebody who says, "Hey, well, I'm not sure." It's an honesty thing as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure that transparency and that vulnerability by you being honest makes you, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, makes you more approachable, more real to them. So,
yeah, I think so. I think it's a big part of it.
That's great. Well, Jerry, thank you. EduLeaders, this has been a great interview today. For the show notes of today's show and other resources, visit educatorslead.com and type the word Jerry into the search tool to find his show notes. That's Jerry, right?
Yep.
Jerry, thank you for sharing your journey with us today. And that wraps up another episode of Educators Lead. This podcast is brought to you by Mometrics, the #1 test preparation company. Mometrics offers study materials for over 1,800 different exams, including the SAT, ACT, GED, end-of-course exams, state standard exams like the STAR, teacher certification exams, advanced placement, CLEP, ASVAB, GRE, and so many more. Mometrics takes the mountains of information students could be tested over for any given exam and boils it all down to just the fluff-free golden nuggets of information that are most likely to be on the exam. They couple that with some great study tips and test-taking strategies to help students maximize their test scores. With their interactive tutorial videos and a layout that makes lesson planning easy, Mometrics study guides, flashcards, and practice questions are a great fit for individual or classroom use. To learn more about our products and our vault of hundreds of free tutorial videos, please visit educatorslead.com/test prep. That's educatorslead.com/test prep. EduLeaders, thank you for joining us on Educators Lead. Visit us at educatorslead.com for everything we talked about today, free resources, and much, much more.